Now, whenever you're talking about technology, and particularly technology that comes into your home and tells other people information, there's always concerns. I know there is an anti-smart meter movement, and I know we don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but what is the anti-smart meter movement?
I was in a meeting a few months ago at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories in Livermore, California, at what is called NIF, which is the National Ignition Facility and a project developing fusion energy. And the discussion came up with Dr. Ed Moses, who is the leader of the project, and his good friend was Peter Darby. Peter Darby is the ex-CEO and chairman of Pacific Gas and Electric. He says the reason he is the ex-chairman of Pacific Gas and Electric had two causes, meaning two events or two causes, which required him to be replaced and a new chairman, a guy named Anthony Early, to come in to run PG&E. The first such event, which resulted in the loss of his job, was the gas explosion in Burlingame, which took out 35 or 40 homes and some people were unfortunately killed. The second issue was the deployment of the smart meter. That's a pretty powerful statement. And for the leader of a national laboratory as prestigious as Lawrence Livermore to tell me the story about Peter Darby, and I'm saying what happened, he said the anti-smart meter movement, in conjunction with their play to the media, became a PR nightmare to PG&E internally. Every company, our company, as you can tell from this interview, I mean, we've had our share of problems, but we've been open and transparent, and we talk about the problems, we solve them, and we move on. Tylenol is the classic case where there was a problem and some people were killed, and they addressed that problem head on. When PG&E started getting complaints about the smart meter, and it was stated that perhaps the smart meter causes cancer, or the smart meter causes mental retardation or MS, or the smart meter could be used as a spying device to allow the local police authority to gain access to your home. They didn't address it correctly. They addressed it by saying the amount of radiation the smart meter produces is less than the amount of radiation your cell phone produces. The anti-smart movement folks and the media listen to only one word: radiation.
So what would you say?
Now, they did not say radio waves. They said radiation, and it became associated with nuclear, sure. And it became a PR nightmare, and it literally caused the chairman of PG&E to lose his job.
What would you say to the people who have concerns?
Well, I've obviously addressed those, and we in fact opened up a website called smartmetersaremyfriend.com. So if you think about it, you go to the internet, type in your browser, smartmetersaremyfriend.com, and that's us. But what we basically say is no, smart meter doesn't generate radiation. It's not nuclear. It does work by radio waves. But remember, the guy who's calling the media suggesting that the smart meter is dangerous is probably using his cell phone. And he probably has a wireless security system inside his house. And he probably has at least 4 or 5 or 6 peripheral devices in his home, everything from a Bluetooth headset to a wireless mouse, all of which use the same radio waves that smart meters use. That needs to be shown to people up front, and it needs to be shown to people that there are absolutely no health consequences associated with very low levels of radio waves. That's okay. One thing. The next thing that we need to explain to people, and this is one of our strategies in our business with eCloud is that when you think about your home computer, everybody today, most everybody, has something called an antivirus software program running. You think of Norton, it's the de facto standard for most people. You know that your PC is safe. You know that you're not going to contract a computer virus. And that antivirus software also has something in it called a firewall. And what the firewall does, it forms a block between things inside your computer and the internet and prevents people from hacking you, theoretically. We, inside the meter and with our technology, we become the firewall between the home and the utility company so that people cannot use the smart meter as the spying mechanism that people have written about. And we also provide the homeowner with peace of mind that everything in his house is safe and secure, and there's no burglar spying on his house to figure out when he's not home to rob the house, and there's no utility company spying on him, and there's no government agency spying on him, because this firewall is providing this level of safety. So
Okay.
those are two discrete answers to your question. We do both.
Okay, and you've addressed those concerns on it. Smart meters are my friend, right?
Smart meters are my friend.
Another friend
of
of
yours. It never
yours.
occurred to me when I invented the smart meter that anybody would ever object to it. And now on probably 20 websites, you'll see my name and papers that I've written, and everybody's complaining about the smart meter.
Which means you're getting your name out there. Okay, another friend of yours, Pat Boone, the iconic singer. What's his involvement with USCL?
As I described a few minutes ago, and you were asking me about the grant, and I had mentioned certain sections of our website which talk about what we call differentiation, how we set ourselves apart from other meter companies. And we have done that by, again, being upfront with the people and leveling with the people, that we need to move beyond what is currently talked about as green energy alternatives, because they just don't do the job and they give people a false sense of security that we have solved energy. Believe me, we have not. I could get very scientific and I could show that it takes more energy to grow a crop of corn and convert ethanol from that crop of corn than I'm going to get by burning the ethanol that's produced. It's a loss, and it's a big loss. There's less than 25% of the amount of energy that I get at the end of that complex process than I had to put into it in terms of energy from the sun, energy from the fertilizer, energy from the water, energy to distill the corn into ethanol. But the politicians like it because it helps corn growers in Iowa because of government subsidies. And we can say the same about solar, and we can say the same about wind power. Because of the fact that on our website, we talked about that, and we also talked about what is the real midterm solution to energy. And we bring up a complicated scientific subject, which to me, in my youth, very youth, was not at all complicated, because I was taught it was being worked on and it would be done. And I was taught as a physics major in the 70s, we would solve energy by the year 2000. In 1980, departing President Jimmy Carter signed something called the Magnetic Fusion Energy Engineering Act, which said that by 1995 we would have demonstrable fusion energy reactors, and by the year 2000 we would have fusion energy reactors generating electricity and putting it on the grid, and by 2005, 2010, that technology would be commercially available. Well, that never happened, and we talk about this on our website. And I met Pat almost 2 years ago, who became very interested because he has children. Everybody's heard of Debbie Boone and her children and grandchildren. And basically, Pat's and most people's thinking is that fossil fuels are finite. We only have X amount of oil and X amount of coal and X amount of natural gas. And we can see a television commercial that says we have enough coal for 100 years or we have gas resources for 100 years. But that's not really true. That's based on the current use of that resource in the United States. The United States has roughly 4% of the world's population, yet we use 28% of the world's energy. Think about that. 4% of the world's population, we use 28% of the world's energy. We now see from the Arab Spring and other events taking place around the world that the internet is causing less developed and less industrialized nations to look at the United States, to look at Europe and other countries, and they basically say, we want to be like you. We want to live the good life. That takes energy. In order to do that, and in order to provide enough energy to allow the other 96% of the world's population to live a standard of living anywhere close to what we're living at, would require us to produce 10 times more energy in a year's time than the world is currently producing. 10 times more. Now, if I have 100 years worth of natural gas, which is, I heard a commercial last night on CNN, I believe, that stated that, if I use 10 times more than we're currently using, we only have 10 years of reserves. That means my children, and certainly my grandchildren, and Pat's children, and certainly Pat's grandchildren and great-grandchildren, are going to have a very unhappy lifetime, if there is indeed a lifetime, because they will not have energy. What this basically says is that the population of the world is either going to have to significantly contract, which is what one group of people, it's called the Malthusian philosophy or movement, wants. They don't want to see 9 billion people by 2050. They want to see 1 billion people by 2100 because we can generate enough electricity. Pat was very excited when I first met him and presented these concepts to him, and he offered to be our spokesperson because he has a following in his magazine and his newspaper columns and stuff he still does on television. And he's saying, well, Tom, what you're talking about is true. And believe me, we have had meetings with every nuclear physicist and fusion-related physicist in the country, and I've introduced them all to Pat. And Pat has actually gotten very involved at this on a personal basis. But by the same token, he says, Tom, what you're talking about is much, much too complicated to communicate to normal people. So he agreed to work with me, and together we have released a series of 8 articles on this concept of fusion power, which he has taken my scientifically pedantic work and reduced it to a level that average people can understand, point one. Secondly, Pat has introduced us to people that have a very strong interest in what our company is doing